back again. I just did the last video, and now I was determined to break into week 2, and here we are. Week 2 of Elijah by Priscilla Shirer. And I am ready to get going. I don't think this lesson is very long. Nope, not very long today. So we'll get this done and knocked out of the park, and then I hope to just keep plugging away until we finish the whole book. I don't know if you've done a lot of Bible studies or not. I hope you have. If you have not done an in-person Bible study, please, I recommend that you try. With your situation, I know situations are all different. Like my mom, she's bedridden. So she can't just go into a Bible study, but something, if you have an opportunity, please do. There's nothing like sitting with a group of people and just talking about God, hearing each other's testimony, hearing each other talk about their own experiences with God and what's changed their heart. I love when our minister shares stories about what he's gone through, and just connects. It just helps connect things, and just kind of eye-opening, like, oh wow, I don't know, there's something about hearing each other's testimony, which that's why we like the Bible, because it is people through God that are testifying about God. Okay, I don't even know how I'm talking about this. Okay, let's move on. All right, so day 1, week 2, title, separation anxiety, and boy, I have dealt with that this year. Go, my people, enter your rooms and close your doors behind you. Hide for a little while until the wrath has passed. Before the year 2020, most of us had never heard the phrase social distancing. Then, within what seemed like a matter of days, we went from meeting with friends at local coffee shops to wearing face masks, quarantining in our homes, and using technology as our only means of interaction. Sequester? Quarantine? Suddenly, these concepts were not just for political prisoners, poison victims, and criminal juries anymore. They were for all of us. Turns out, though, this idea of setting oneself apart has long been part of God's process in developing his people for usefulness and impact. Jesus demonstrated himself, enduring 40 days of solitude before entering into public ministry. Throughout his earthly life, he would often slip away to the wilderness to be alone with God, usually in the early morning while it was still dark. Socially distant. Before the rest of us even knew, social distance was a thing. As far back as 1 Kings 17, we see Yahweh prescribe for Elijah a season of separation as a necessary stop on the prophet's journey to spiritual maturity and victory. Yes, we do. So, turn to 1 Kings 17. Okay, back to 1 Kings 17. Boom, I'm still there. Verses 2 through 4, focusing on verse 3 in the margin. What are the 3 actions that God required Elijah to take? Okay, so let me reread it again. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have ordered the ravens to feed you there. Wait, did I read all that right? 2 through 4. Oh, yeah, I did. Okay. So focus on verse 3. Okay, so verse 3. Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. If I'm saying that word wrong, I am sorry. Okay, so what are the 3 actions that God required Elijah to do? Leave. That's sometimes always hard to do. Turn east. Leave. Turn eastward. And hide. Leave. Turn eastward and hide. Okay? That's what I got. Maybe you got something different. Page 49. As you begin the week of study, ask the Holy Spirit to give you clarity in responding to the following 3 related questions. All right, so Holy Spirit, help us, and those of us who are doing this, help us to understand these questions and open our hearts and mind to what you're teaching us. Okay. Number 1. In what area of life have you sensed God asking you to leave or go away from anything or anyone that's been a customary part of how you operate? Okay, confession time. I really like to watch Netflix. And as you know, there's a lot of bad stuff on there. And I'm guilty of that. And I know God's telling me, Tara, stop it. A really good indicator was last night. My husband has been watching Love is Blind. And that was okay. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention so much, but I was still watching it with him. And it wasn't super inappropriate, I didn't think. But then when the last season got done, it introduced the next season starting, which it was called Love is Blind, Gay Love is Blind, or Queer Love is Blind. And it's all about these lesbian women and acting out like love is blind. And to me, the images they showed were not appropriate. They were not good for my mind. They were not good for my heart or my soul. And it was just sad. It was sad, and I'm going to be honest, it was not comfortable to watch. And it was just the preview for the next season. So I know I need to be pulling away from Netflix. And I keep telling myself, I'll just find something that's appropriate for me to watch, but I'm really struggling finding anything. So there you go. That was my confession. Your turn to confess, but I can't hear it, so you can go ahead and write it down. Whatever you want to write, but I'll write down Netflix. I need to start walking away. I would like to cancel it. I don't know if my husband will let me yet, but maybe one of these days. Number 2, what direction have you felt the Spirit turning you toward? For me, it has been reaching out to our community more. Our churches are dying. Our churches in our little community are dying. We're averaging only around 20, 25 people in our church. Same with them. One of the other churches is like 10. So it's not, we have kids, we have families in our community, but they either don't go to church or they go somewhere else to church. So that is a goal. That's something I feel I need to be doing. Number 3, what will it require for you to fully hide yourself and completely engage in this new location if you're to receive every bit of development He's planned for you in this space and season? I don't know. Hide myself and engage in this new location. I don't know if I'm hiding myself. I don't know. I have to think on that one. But whatever you're thinking, write about yourself. Oh, and one final question. Important. Have you complied with the Spirit's conviction in these matters? If not, what do you think has kept you from it? I don't know about you, but a lot of those moments when I feel God's asking me to do stuff, I'm like, I'm busy. I'm tired. I'm tired, Lord. I'm tired. I don't have money. I just spent money on all these patterns for cross stitch. I don't want to. It's me. I get in the way of myself. I get in the way of the Holy Spirit. So, while Cherith's precise GPS coordinates remain a mystery to modern explorers, its dynamics do not. All the land east of the Jordan was rugged and unkempt, dotted with a variety of mountains and hills. Its valleys were as deep as its peaks were high. It was known for its long stretches of lonely wasteland, broken only by thin streams of trickling water here and there, like the brook called simply, singularly, Cherith. Cherith is a place name meaning cutting or ditch. Okay, so Cherith. Oh, it's Kereth in my book with a K, but CH here. Okay. No one knows for sure where this narrow stream pronounced Kirith was located, but Elijah knew. Concealed in the hills, this rivulet, where God had called him to sequester himself, was a place of pervasive silence and widespread solitude. This secluded spot was away from everything was the perfect place for God to accomplish the next stage of his intended work in the life of his servant. Consider some of the dynamics Elijah would be leaving behind. Within the palace, for example, where he just begun his public ministry as a prophet of Yahweh, and the stark contrast Kerith presented him. Write some of your observations below, so you can write what you observe there. The bustling activities and polished accoutrements that characterized life at the center of the action were a far cry from where Elijah was going. Stones and scorpions were more ubiquitous around Kerith than people and luxuries. But Elijah's calling for the time being would not keep him in proximity of the palace or amid the throbbing heart of the masses, where he could see up close the effect of his drought pronouncement on the king and his people. Instead, he was being ordered to sequester himself out where he'd not be able to consult with or depend on any other human, to simply be alone with his God. Here, he'd need to entrust the results of his ministry to the one who called him to Ahab's court in the first place, and who just as clearly called him away now into the next leg of the process. F.B. Meyer is one of my favorite theologians. You'll find a quote from him in the margin regarding Elijah's time at Kerith. I'm going to read on the side here. The one who is to take a high place before his fellows must take a low place before his God, and there is no better manner of bringing a man down than by suddenly dropping him out of a sphere to which he is beginning to think himself essential, teaching him that he is not at all necessary to God's plan, and compelling him to consider in the sequestered veil of some Kerith how imbalanced are his motives and how insignificant his strength. That is so true. Read it over, then meet me back here to consider a few of its choice nuggets. First one, suddenly dropping him out of a sphere. When God suddenly removes us from a season that's been populated with many people and relationships into one that's marked by solitude, it can be unsettling. Why might such an abrupt shift sometimes be necessary in adjusting our perspectives, pruning our pride, and reorienting our priorities? I don't know. Sometimes I'm just thinking of some horrible things I experienced in my life, and that solitude, that when you, one instance, I personally removed myself from everyone because I was just so devastated, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. If you've had family issues and things happen, I remove myself completely from people. I hardly talk to anybody, just my husband and my kids, and that was about it. And I think that was then that I really actually started talking to God for the first time. You know what I mean? It was like the first time I'd ever actually talked to God, okay? So I think that can be one way. Pruning pride, I witnessed that with one of my own family members, and it's definitely happened to me. But their picture was one of, they were up here in popularity and gossip and da-da-da-da-da. And then when this horrible thing happened, completely shut off from everyone and everything. And this family member, you could see the change. The pride was removed. It's happened to me too. Still happens. But this one family member, that instance, you could see the change. And then you can see also when somebody goes through something, their priorities do change. And it's suddenly not all about, well, I mean, for us, I think for Americans, and maybe this is worldwide, I don't know, but we're so worried about you need to go to college. You need to get the right job. You need to make the right money. You need to marry the right person. You need to have the right amount of kids. You need to dress a certain way. You need to look a certain way. You need to live in a certain place. You need to now buy another car. You need to have this more. You need to have a bigger house. You need to have this. Did you go on 500 vacations? Did you take selfies and pictures and da-da-da-da-da? I think that's where Americans, our priorities are, and we're so worried about that all the time. It just fosters this self-hatred and doubt, I think. And true contentment can be found in just letting all of that go and just be alone with God. My husband, if you hear him, he's in the background. He just came back in from, I don't know what he was doing. I don't know. They were cleaning up this, no, they're getting, my husband takes care of the Ansley Cemetery. Sidebar, my husband takes care of our Ansley Cemetery, and they're getting it ready for a funeral. There's a gentleman that passed away. He was very old, so they're getting it ready. So, and then they got to pick up flowers left over from Memorial Day. Anyways, just so you know, I don't think you care, but okay, moving on. Page 51. Beginning to think himself essential. It's easy to feel as if we're essential to God's work getting done. We can begin to carry a weight that is His alone to bear, then expect the glory that is His alone to receive. How might Cherith realign this thinking in Elijah and in us? So Elijah got removed. He was not there to watch. And so I think that it forced him to realize that this is God's work and God's work alone. And that is something I think I forget. And I'm trying to use my human power to do stuff. That's not it. It's God. It's His work alone. Next one. How unbalanced are His motives? Often we can't see our inner selves clearly until we get quiet. Without the distractions of a full and hectic life, how can the sequestered veil of some Cherith help bring these discrepancies of motive into sharper view? I don't know. I'm just thinking, if you don't do it, I hope you do it. I hope you do sequester yourself and remove yourself, either by getting up early in the morning, maybe late at night, or going on a walk by yourself. I think that's a great time to sequester yourself and really examine your heart and your motives and the things you're doing each and every day. It's a great talk time with God. Okay, moving on. Mind if I just speak to you from my own heart and experience for a second? Everybody's life is different. I understand that. But as I look back on mine, I see where at every turn, every time God has been preparing me to tackle a fresh challenge or to move into a new spiritual place with Him, the process He's chosen has almost always begun with a stop in Cherith, a season of life that I perceived at the time to be undesirably obscure, isolating, unproductive, and relatively mundane. Truth be told, I haven't always complied quickly or easily with wherever God was sending me to, at least not voluntarily, as Elijah appeared to do. God has often needed to push me, closing doors in one direction, lighting my path to another, severing and resetting relationships, then diverting me toward Cherith and the disciplines and values He knew it would develop in me, a renewed passion for prayer, a fresh hunger for His voice, and a clearer focus on His priorities. Yeah. Finally, upon coming to my Cherith, I've struggled there through a sense of loneliness and insecurity of being unseen. I haven't always understood why this stage of the process is necessary. It sometimes seemed to me like a waste of weeks, months, and years away from the work He's been calling me to do. Work that seems a lot more important to me than the little I appeared to be accomplishing while at Cherith. But just as Elijah apparently needed to learn, I'm not as necessary to the greater work of God as much as the greater work of God is necessary in me. The sequestered veil of Cherith is where He keeps teaching me this. And whenever He's wanted to reshape and refocus me in areas where my flesh has begun to take control, or just to prepare me for the next stage of my journey with Him, He whispers, "Priscilla, my daughter, trust me." I thought my husband was coming in. He just left. So let me start again. "Priscilla, my daughter, trust me. Go away from where you've been. Cut unnecessary strings to passions ambitions, people, and pleasures that are dividing your affections and allegiance. Turn your energy and attention in a new direction, toward new goals that I will show you. Hide yourself there and rest until I release you. Pay attention when you sense God's Spirit speaking to you in this way. Notice they're the same three things he said to Elijah. Number 1, go away from here. When the Spirit begins to whisper this directive, you'll sense a rise of conviction in your soul about a current aspect of your life, compelling you to leave behind a habit, an ambition, perhaps even a relationship you may not want to leave. I'm not talking about God-honoring commitments you've made to your spouse or children, of course, but entanglements with certain people that are keeping you from going where he wants you to go. Number 2, turn. As you obey and separate yourself, he'll begin to show you a new direction, interest, or goal to pivot toward. This clarity might not be immediate, but he'll slowly begin reorienting your heart and hands in a new direction. When he does go that way, turn that way. Hide. Fully immerse yourself in the lessons he wants to teach you and the spiritual disciplines he longs to renew in you. Finally, divest yourself from the idols pulling back against your commitment to him and making you half-hearted. Then press into the new internal postures and external dynamics that Cherith requires. Rest here until he determines it's time to release you. In thinking about these 3 steps, do you currently see the Lord dealing with you in any specific way? If so, which one, which step, which aspect of your relationship with him point to this? I don't know. You have to think about that one as well. Take a look at how this process of separation helps shape the lives of well-known biblical personalities. Choose any of the 2 following biblical case studies: Joseph, Moses, Samuel, or Paul. I'm choosing Joseph and Moses. For each, consider the following questions. Where did they end up going or being sent that may have seemed unnecessary or even adverse to their ultimate goals? Well, that's easy. Joseph got sold to slaves by his brothers and taken to Egypt. And Moses, he left Egypt because he killed somebody and hid out for 40 years, got married and all that. And then God called him back at the age of 80 to get to work. I'm always amazed by that. So, next one. What indicates God's hand was still on them while they were there? Just a lot of miracles happened. Lots of miracles in both of those stories. How did God bring good to them in those places? It was incredible, all the good that God brought for Joseph and Moses. For Joseph, he continued to put him in a place of authority and just allowed him to rule next to Pharaoh pretty much, and pretty much help save Israel through God because of the famine. And so there was plenty of food in Egypt, and Joseph preserved the Israelites, which God actually did through Joseph. Moses, of course, through God, once again, preserved the Israelites by taking them out of Egypt. So Israel went into Egypt. They really liked it. They stayed a little too long. They stayed for like 400 years and multiplied until the Pharaoh at that time had forgotten all about who Joseph was and was like, we need to make them into slaves. And then here comes Moses, who takes them out of Egypt because God never wanted them to stay in Egypt that long, but they did. So he preserved them, and he took care of Joseph and Moses through all that, all the trials and tribulations. He continued to bring both of them into a good place. Okay, last page, page 54. Knowing what you know of their futures, how might these seasons of separation have been essential to God's purposes for them? I think I already said that. They needed that salt and pepper. They needed that shaken on them in order to become the great men they ended up becoming. And just like you need that salt and pepper. I need that salt and pepper of God, shaking it up, spicing it up, salting us up, so that we too can be the great people He needs us to be. Now, when I say great, I don't mean like Billy Graham great, although that might be you. I don't know. I just mean great things that you and I don't even know about, but will be revealed to us in heaven by God. This is what I need you to do. You did it, and this is what happened because of it. We're probably never going to know until then. So, and what people did for us, we're probably never going to know until then. Okay, last part. Here we go. Joseph didn't yet know, while in prison, that his character was being shaped for becoming the compassionate prime minister of Egypt. Moses, in the fields of Midian, far away from his people, could never imagine he'd be commissioned as Israel's lead freedom fighter. Samuel, separated as a child from his parents, didn't know his future service would require an ear for God's voice that needed the quietness of God's house as a learning laboratory. Paul didn't know his years in obscurity were preparing him to be one of the primary apostles of the first century church. Their missions, their ministries, were each mammoth in scope, but in each case, the metal they needed for it was forged in places far away from where God ultimately took them. Periods of seclusion did not devalue or derail them or denote a lapse in God's pleasure toward them. Instead, as with Elijah, isolation proved vital in God's process of preparing them for lives of maximum fruitfulness. It's where their passions were shaped and their ambitions were purified, where they met God in new and unexpected ways. Elijah, unbeknownst to him, was being prepared for a public showdown that would demand a level of courage, conviction, and inner fortitude he did not yet possess. And Cherith was one of the places where God would produce it in him. Don't despise the sequestered solitude of Cherith's sister. The spiritual power you desire and you will soon require cannot be cultivated in any other place. Okay, so what is your Cherith? Are you being sequestered right now? Are you being prepared for something right now? I feel like that's happening with my church right now. I feel like we're being sequestered. And it's been tough. It's been hard. It's been good. And it's been a blessing in already several ways. But we have a long ways to go of being isolated and sequestered. We need to be prayerful to prepare for what's coming for the future, just like you. So, anyways, thank you for sticking it out, and I hope you give me some comments that I can respond to, and we can have our own little study. I just appreciate all of your views and likes, and just I appreciate you. You're trying to walk in the way of God. It's not easy, and yet it is. I know that's a conundrum. Is it a conundrum? I don't know. It's not easy, but it is. And you can't find that out until you accept Christ into your heart. And then you'll see what I mean. So, thank you for watching, and I will try and get the next video out in the next couple days. Thank you again. God bless you.